minority in India. And we've got to do that producing stuff that people need, basic needs, shelter, food, clothing, energy, etc. I'm sorry, this keeps jumping a bit. And in order to get those solutions, I'd like to just share with you what would be the way to do the innovation, how do you get the multiplication, how do you scale up. Well, a sustainable future for India has to be one that has a just, socially just, fair society, and it has a green economy. That's pretty simple. It's only two things we need to do. A just and long-term society needs to meld the imperatives of economics with the imperatives of the environment and with the desirabilities of the social issues. In other words, fairness, environmental harmony, and growth. So clearly, these three things have to come together, and you've got to get them together. But we can't do it the wrong way around. We've been putting economics first as the big thing, and all the other stuff. It's got to be the economy is within the society, is within the life support systems. It's inverting the way we've been thinking. In other words, if you turn our policy making on these issues upside down, you may be much closer to where we have to go. There are engineers in this room and managers, and so you would understand that we need to increase our productivity, and productivity what? Of everything, of capital, land, nature, etc., and particularly of our knowledge systems. Now, this is a one-slide lesson, Cybernetics 101, on efficiency. Efficiency is not simply about rated efficiency. It's not simply about what's output over input. It's also potential efficiency, what should be. If you make a minor adjustment, what you should have with more or less the resources you have and the technology you have. And a higher level would be a latent efficiency, what could be if you make some fundamental changes. Some changes in structure, bring in new technology or whatever. And then there is systemic efficiency, when you actually change the system. Once I changed the bus system of Delhi in 1973 when the price of oil went up, and what I did basically was make the routes and the timings and the schedules more or less like a metro system. And as a consequence, we were carrying twice as many passengers without adding a single bus. That would be called systemic efficiency, just using your stuff. Another systemic efficiency would be behavioral change. Instead of private transport, public transport, etc., but even more, designing your cities so that you don't need that much transport. So that would be systemic change. And you get rising levels. Most of our time, we get stuck at this level. But India can't afford to do that. India has to go deeper and deeper into what are the possible ways out. Now, we have one possibility, and that is copycat. Copycat means we aspire to the same things that the Americans have or the Chinese have, and we go for broke. We want to made in India, make in India simply means that we're really going to be exporting large quantities of stuff to people who don't want to buy it. We're just copying China. Well, let's see what happens. It's business as usual, very little change, easy to sell, everybody will buy into it, but it's a dead end. You get a kind of development that is no good for anybody, rich or poor. You spend most of your time in traffic jams. Or you can have piggyback. Piggyback means best practices. Take the best practices from Japan on this, on agriculture on that, and on industry on that, and then you get basically things like solar energy or light bulbs changing from incandescent to CFLs to LEDs, etc. It gives you a factor of 4 reduction. That would give you factor of 4 reduction in material and resource use. And it's called potential energy. It's technical, and then housekeeping, basically energy saving. You can get it done with fiscal incentives, basic caring of how you do things. Next one is leapfrog. Leapfrog is where you really can now start thinking about how India should be, as distinct from following other people. And leapfrog takes you to latent, brings factor of 10 or more into your savings. Clean technologies, material-saving technologies, creating wide awareness, regulations and incentives, but a fundamental change. And then finally, you have horse jump, where you go beyond factor of 10, 50. Here you have to involve nature. Here you have to think completely differently. All of you know that transport, Mr. Gadkari knows, that transport by river is cheap. Horse carriage, bicycle, trains, cars. But the best of all, and these are the costs, ultimate costs, total costs, including ecological costs per kilometer. The cheapest by far is balloons, is airships. And the future of long-distance transport, I believe, in India is going to have to be by air, but not airplanes, but by airships. Because the savings, not just in terms of fuel, in money, but in nature, are so huge that, but there's hardly any expense devoted to R&D on this yet, but it should be. So global systems are like this. The cost, I've plotted the cost against efficiency, and most of them go like this. We imagine the higher the efficiency, the greater the cost. It's exponential because as you get more and more efficient, it gets harder to get additional efficiency. But what we need to do is to find disruptive ways to bring it down. Or we have to try and figure how to tunnel through so that we don't follow the West or the industrialized countries in all their mistakes, but we make a quantum jump. Copycat is down here. Copycat is low cost but low efficiency. Piggyback is a bit better on both. It's better on efficiency, higher cost. Leapfrog starts bringing you down in cost, higher. And then you basically have the highest efficiencies at least cost by using nature and other technologies like the one I showed you. So let me give you 2 or 3 quick examples. Business as usual, incremental change, deep change, and then structural transformation, including behavioral change. Factor 20. You might get 20% as Copycat by being a little bit better using newer technologies. Factor of 4 or 5 with piggyback, and then you start getting real stuff in terms of resource use over there. Now the methods we today depend, like Apple does and others, on obsolescence. Then we go to things like miniaturization, more durability of our products and so on. Then sharing of resources like Uber, taxis, things of that sort, cars, carpooling. And then you get into real stuff like vegetarian diets, thinking of poetry as a major source of GDP growth, arts, culture, and devoting your lives to pursuing other ways for human fulfillment. In the case of waste, you might look at dumping and incineration, composting and recycling, reusing and refusing, and finding ways, in fact, to literally go. So actually, all the stuff that we are pursuing today isn't really what we need. What we need is a change of priorities, not just in our rhetoric, which we are very good at, but in our policies and in action. First priority, I believe, is investing in our girls, children, and women, improving their health and well-being, and getting them jobs and delaying the age of marriage. By the way, it's the most effective way to reduce population growth. The best contraceptive I know of is a job for women and education for girls. This is a factory we have in Orcha, in the middle of India, in Bundelkhand. It was set up in 1992 with 25 women. It was an all-women factory, and I sent a demographer 21 years after it was started to study what had happened to the lives of the women. 21 years, there were still 24 of the original 25 women there. There were in the factory 2 births in that entire period of all the women put together. The control group, same age, same caste, etc., had 23. So there's a factor of 12 reduction in births simply by giving them a decent job. It's not very hard to do. It makes money for us. In fact, we're profiting from the fact that they're having fewer kids. It's very simple. If you plot, these maps are drawn so that they are proportional to that parameter at the top. So the number of, India has the largest number of girls not in primary school, the largest number of girls not in secondary school, illiterate young women, illiterate women. In every one, India is the biggest country of all. And it's positively correlated with the number of births. And if you plot for different countries, fertility and GDP growth, GDP per capita, you can see a pretty good correlation. In fact, it's 0.85 R squared. This means that if we can just put, for example, we did a model of this, 1,000 kilograms of oil equivalent from the north, which is only 1/20th of what they use, into the south, you would actually save 3 billion people on this planet by the end of the century. So there are ways to do these things which mathematical modeling can help explain to decision makers what the thing is. Priority 1A, use new adaptive mechanisms for learning. We have a course, a product for literacy for these women, illiterate women, which uses very, very refined memory techniques and uses ways by morphing pictures to teach them how to read and write in 29 days. They can read a newspaper, write a poem or a letter of thank you to the sponsor who pays money for her education. 150,000 women we've trained are training at the moment, and it works. Investing in people, creating green jobs. These are village-level jobs for building materials, roofing tiles, hand looms, and so on. Priority 3, regenerate the resource base, develop your wastelands, which is not hard to do and very cheap. Contour trenching, cattle proofing, you can get a forest literally within a year. You can do all kinds of organic farming, water harvesting. We've made about 250 of those check dams, each one of which has a return on investment of more than 1,000% per year. Ecosystem services. People don't realize how important ecosystem services are. These are the dollars per hectare per year. If you look at the value of coral reefs, for example, it's $500,000 per hectare per year they're providing to the global economy in terms of breeding fish and all the other things. In all these cases, rivers, tropical forests, look at tropical forests. It's more than $5,000 per hectare per year to plant a forest. The fourth priority is infrastructure and shelter, affordable shelter. We make very low-cost housing, all commercially viable. Civil society. How important is civil society? Studies have shown, this one was by a Harvard professor in Italy, that good governance comes with good, strong civil society. Community empowerment, important. Supporting innovation, particularly for the kinds of disruptive technologies that I was talking about. This is the book that is coming out this week, Blue Economy, which has 100 technologies inspired by nature, almost all of them requiring virtually no capital investment and huge returns. The 5 kingdoms of nature, animals, plants, etc., come together and they do your work for you. This is a building like ours. This one is in Zimbabwe, in Harare, built on termite principles. It's the most valuable real estate in the whole of Africa because they don't have air conditioners. So your costs of running that building are very low. Priority 8, facilitate social enterprises. Now this is selling, obviously it's self-serving because I run a social enterprise, but I think the future lies particularly for job creation and for production of what people really need on the ground, micro, mini, and small businesses like these. And finally, we have to change our indicators of progress. You've got to go beyond GDP. We have to now incorporate human well-being, planetary health, And there are all kinds of things going on right now, the genuine progress indicator, the ecological footprint, the biocapacity I talked about, gross national happiness. These are all ways a few people are now looking at how we can really measure the well-being of people. That champagne glass is no longer acceptable. We really have to go for a glass of beer or maybe of water, but we have to have a more equitable society if it's going to be sustainable. So you have to nurture all types of capital, human, physical, natural, financial, and you have to think about this girl. You have, as Gandhiji said, Antodaya, putting the last first. Our government's only job should be, this picture should be, or the picture of that little girl with her two brothers, should be on the Prime Minister's wall. That's the only thing that they ought to be worried about. The rich will take care of themselves. All of us, middle-class people, we don't need their policies. That girl needs their policies to support her. So, as Gandhiji said, be the change that you want to see. And I wanted to add that we would need 2 additional worlds, 3 additional Indias, and we only have 1. So, many, many more years for You Just Want, and many, many, many more for all our children. Thank you.